Hey, good morning. Welcome to Life Online. It's Monday. Last week we talked about attitude. I've got to get one more verse in for you. So there's that verse that we think about attitude because our attitudes flow out of our thought lives. If you find yourself in a bad mood, if you find yourself really having an attitude, then the question is, what are you thinking about? And sure enough, Philippians 4:8, finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. Friday we hit James Allen says, you are today where your thoughts have brought you, you will be tomorrow where your thoughts take you. So your thought life is really important. In fact, it's Paul in Romans that talks about we're being transformed by the renewing of our mind. So it matters what you think about. You have to have a disciplined life. It's part of your discipleship. Disciplined thinking, and think about those things. Then comes verse 9, which often we stop at the end of verse 8 and we overlook this verse 9, but this is a great verse. Whatever you have learned or received or heard from me or seen in me. Look at that. Paul says, okay, I taught you some things. What did you learn? I imparted some things. What did you receive from me? You've heard some things. Can you remember my voice, the tone of my voice? How, yes, I taught you, but what were the things that I taught you? What you heard from me, and then also, did you watch my life? What you've seen in me. And then it says this, put it into practice. In other words, just, this is how you live. Live like this. And the God of peace will be with you. One more time, it's the issue of God's peace. It's going to come on in, the shalom of God, like a flood. And God will get you through the hard times and through the challenging times. You'll make it through this. I love this. Put it into practice. In other words, it's really the principle of imitation. It's like the child that imitates the parent. Love this image. Isn't that really incredible? This one's a great image for imitate as well. So Paul speaks and talks about this, not just here in Philippians 4:9, but catch here Ephesians chapter 5, verses 1 and 2. Imitate God, therefore, in everything you do, because you are his dear children. So live a life that's filled with love, following the example of Christ. Live like Jesus. Imitate him. He loved us and offered himself as a sacrifice for us, a pleasing aroma to God. So live like this. In 1 Corinthians chapter 11, Paul talks about imitation again. In fact, he says, follow my example as I follow the example of Christ. And let's go ahead and real quick, just put this into context. You'll find a divided church there in the city of Corinth. They're struggling with immorality, the local immorality, but especially some of the dividing lines between those who were Jewish in background, those who were Gentile in background. In addition to that, there was the rich, the poor, and Paul, and those also with certain spiritual gifts. Paul was really, really confrontational with them, and he says, listen, this is how I need you to live. You follow me because I'm following Jesus the best that I can. So follow my example, imitate me. And let me just put it into a little bit of context. At the close of 1 Corinthians chapter 10, Paul speaks and says, I have the right to do anything, you say, but not everything is beneficial. I have the right to do anything, but not everything is constructive. No one should seek their own good, but the good of others. And by the way, yes, there's freedom in Christ. And the people in Corinth were saying that. So let me live like I want to live. I am free in Christ. But Paul comes and he challenges them, and especially hits the will you eat meats that have been sacrificed to idols. It's offensive to some and a stumbling block, but do you still exercise your freedom? And he says, listen, you do. You're free in Christ, but not everything that you would do, that you have freedom to do, is beneficial, nor is it constructive. And then he says just a little bit later down in that passage, and these are the closing verses of chapter 10 that lead into chapter 11, verse 1. So whatever you eat or drink or whatever you do it all for the glory of God. Do not cause anyone to stumble, whether Jews, Greeks, or the church of God. In other words, whether it's those in Jewish background outside the church, whether it's the Gentiles outside the church, or whether it's inside the walls of the church. Don't be a stumbling block to others by your freedoms, by your license to live like I want to live, even as I try to please everyone in every way. Paul says this, "For I am not seeking my own good, but the good of many, so that they may be saved." Paul lived his life really to lay it down, even as Jesus did for a ransom for many. He saw that of how Jesus lived, and he says, so I want to live my life like that. Sometimes we don't know how to live like Jesus, and what we have to do is we have to look to people who have been spiritual parents to us in the faith, individuals that we say, man, they're a great example of this. And so what you do is you imitate them. Kathy Vanover, our great friend, used to say, I didn't know what it was to be like Jesus. When we would sing the song, to be like Jesus, to be like Jesus, all I ask is to be like him. I had a hard time understanding that. He was so far out of my league. But she said there was a godly woman in our church that I looked up to. And I said, I will pattern my life and follow her as she follows Jesus. That's a great word, isn't it? Catch here. Follow my example as I follow the example of Christ. This is New Living Translation. And you should imitate me just as I imitate Christ. Here's Amplified Version. Pattern yourselves after me. Follow my example as I imitate and follow Christ, the Messiah. Hey, listen, this is a way that if you're going to excel with a great attitude, what you need to do is there's going to be times you can't discipline your life, your thought life. But what you can do is you can close your eyes and you can hear the words of some wise, godly people who follow Jesus, and you can hear their words and you can see their lives in your mind's eye, and you can watch them, and as you watch them, then you imitate them. This is a great way for us to live with great attitudes in life. So we got a week ahead of us. Let's go after that attitude one more time. Anyway, have an awesome, awesome week as you follow Jesus.